Welcome everyone to the second public workshop for the Pinehurst Small Area Plans. If you have joined us at the previous workshop, some of the intro information will be familiar to you, maybe a good reminder. Bear with us as we go through that because we feel like we might have a few new people as well joining us. And I'll ask my co-host to admit people as they might be coming in late. Currently, we are at 48 participants. So we'll go ahead and get started tonight. The presentation is broken into three parts. We'll start with the overview presentation. That will last for about 20 minutes and go through things like the project schedule, the scope, and what we are addressing as the consultants for this project. As well as some of the existing conditions and principles, planning principles that we use to create the options and some of the street sections, et cetera, that we'll be showing you tonight. We'll then move into the presentation that focuses on the small area plan of Village Place. And that again will last 15 to 20 minutes. Then we want to get to the fun part where we have a good amount of time. From about 6:15 to 6:55, we'll go into breakout rooms. You'll be joined with one of our facilitators, and they'll walk you through a series of questions on those plan options and recommendations that we've just shared with you in the presentation. You'll be able to voice your opinions, your concerns, your thoughts and ideas on those plans. And again, it's just focused on Village Place. So we have an entire session that's just focused on Village Place. We will then rejoin the main room here as we are all together. We'll go through the Pinehurst South presentation, again, 15 to 20 minutes for that portion. And then we'll have another 40 minutes to go through the Pinehurst South. After that 40-minute session, we'll rejoin everyone here back in the main room, and we'll just conclude with some next steps and what you can expect as we move forward with the project. So that's our full agenda, as you can see up on screen. If you have a particular interest in Pinehurst South, but aren't too interested in Village Place, you could opt to rejoin us at 6:55. We hope that everyone can stay through the full duration, but we understand that people may have different obligations. So if you do have to leave for a portion of time, please rejoin us because we'll still be here, and we definitely want as many people participating as possible. Okay, so just some logistics on how to participate in Zoom, and I will make a note that this meeting is being recorded. If you have an urgent question during the presentation, use the chat feature. You can find that in hovering over the lower toolbar here at the center of the toolbar, and you can open chat and send a message to myself, the host, and our co-host. So you can direct that to Cecily, Mackenzie. You should be able to see who's host and co-host, and just send us a message. We will allow you, obviously, to share audio once we get into the breakout rooms. And that's really your time to be very vocal and give us all your opinions. And we just ask that people be good listeners as well as vocal participants during those sessions. An important note, if you logged in on 2 devices into this Zoom meeting, go down and hover over the participant button here in the lower toolbar. Go to your name or number, hover over that, and there will be a more icon that you can then link your devices. If you're having trouble with that, again, please send the host and co-host a message via chat and we'll get you hooked up. The reason why that's important is if you go to the breakout rooms, you may end up in 2 separate breakout rooms, audio and video separated, and that won't be very much fun for you. So if you have that problem, just come back to the main room and I'll get you squared away. I'll be in the main room for the duration. Okay, I'd like to just take a moment to introduce our team. Those of you who joined us before were familiar faces. We have Matt D'Amico, who's the principal in charge. I'm Cecily Bedwell. I'm the project manager for this endeavor. Mackenzie is here tonight and has been helping a lot as our lead planner, and landscape architect Brian Reitz. We're also joined by a few other people. Maite and Sebastian are joining us as facilitators. We have Anna Dennis also joining us as a facilitator. And then we have some consultants joining us tonight, Melina Dougal from DREA, and we have both Adam and Jessica from Ramey Kemp. So you'll be in good hands when you move into the breakout rooms tonight. You'll be joined by one of our facilitators in each of those. So our project area, we have two separate small area plans. These came out of recommendations from the comp plan and include Village Place here in the north, right adjacent to the Village Center and going north to 211. We also have Pinehurst South, which is on the southern border of the village boundary, which you can see in the brown line shown on screen. Our goals and objectives for this project are to create the two small area plan reports, as well as form-based codes or development standards that will allow development that comes forward to a way to evaluate that and give a framework for new development that's coming into these two areas of Pinehurst. We are charged with referencing and building upon the 2019 comprehensive plan. And we'll point out a few times tonight where we have somewhat deviated from that and the reasons behind those deviations. Our job is to provide these recommendations and an implementation strategy for accomplishing those over a time period. So we'll end up with short, mid, and long-term implementation strategies. Our focus is on planning, landscape, transportation, streetscape, and the market and economics. I should note that we do not have in our scope a full traffic analysis, but Ramey Kemp has been assisting us with doing trip gen for the plan options and giving us input on the street alignments and the street sections that you'll see tonight. So here we are zoomed into the Village Place. Again, you'll see 211 at the top of the screen, and then just to the south is the Village Center. Bisecting our study area is Rattlesnake Trail. And then there's a lot of open space that you'll see around the area: Grassy Wicker Park, Cannon Park, the Pergola Garden, the Arboretum. And then there are some, what I would say, underdeveloped or areas that could be further developed with infill to the west of Rattlesnake, and a few other parcels intermixed. And then south of McCaskill, we have an area that's dominated by industrial or service uses, light industrial and service uses, and we'll take a look at our recommendations for that area as well. As we move east are the small lot, single family detached predominantly, as well as the Pinehurst Elementary School. For Village Place, the recommendations coming out of the comprehensive plan were to have redevelopment focus on a mix of uses, creating walkable destinations, and create an extension of the historic core. The existing industrial, retail, and multifamily uses that are underserving should be redeveloped to reinforce the village character, importantly. And then new buildings were recommended to be in the 1 to 3 story range. Parking was a critical issue coming out of the comp plan, so we need to address the parking concerns of the existing development, as well as any new proposed buildings to make sure that the parking is accommodated within the area. We also want to build off the Golf by Day and Arts by Night theme that came out of the comp plan. That's important, and I'm sure we all want to get back to, and you probably may have just started to reconnect with each other outside as we move into the transition phase of this post-pandemic, hopefully, world that we're moving in, and we want to get back and celebrate the ability to have group gatherings such as art festivals, music festivals, and whatnot. So we tried to roll in some of those ideas within the Village Place area. As we move south, the overview of Pinehurst South is it borders the harness track to the north along Monticello Drive. It's bisected by NC5. And then at the south end are Arnett, Cotton, and Olivia Streets. There's a mix of commercial uses, largely flanking each side and predominantly on the west side of NC5, office uses in the Trotter Hills Office Park, some senior living and supportive services, as well as a mix of residential types, largely single family to the west, and then within the study area, some mix of single family and multifamily, both for sale and rental to the west of NC5. In the comprehensive plan, there was a suggestion to develop an innovation hub to target greenfield and infill redevelopment that's connected to the area around it, focus on medical, life science, and research facilities, and then have supportive uses such as retail, service, and low-rise mixed use. New buildings were conceived to be 1 to 2 stories in height. And then the last idea to share here coming out of the summary of the comp plan was to connect the residential grid via a series of connected streets. So we have started, those of you who have been with us through the full duration know that our contract was approved October, November. We really started this all off with a kickoff trip down in December of 2020. We had stakeholder interviews. We conducted the first workshop, and we did an online survey all in those first few months of the project, starting in December and spanning through February 2021. Since the workshop, we've been working on the plans and recommendations that you'll see tonight, and we are now here at workshop 2. We will then immediately following this workshop continue right into phase 3, which is where we will first create a draft and then final reports and form-based codes that will bring us to the finish line of the project. And you'll get to see those at Public Workshop 3. And the dates to be determined, but I imagine it will be in the September range, but stay tuned for that. You probably all know this website, and I've been told today that there are now no hyphens here. We'll send that new link to the Engage Pinehurst website. I'm sure most of you know where that is, but it now does not have the hyphens between small area plans. We'll send that out, but you probably registered for this workshop via that website. And this is where you'll find all of the project materials that we've posted. The market reports up there, the summary of the Public Workshop 1, and phase 1 engagement is posted. So you'll find all of those materials there. And just to go over that, we started doing interviews with key stakeholders through the months of December and January. We talked to many of you, and thank you for continuing to participate. We had in February the first public workshop, and that was held virtually. We did have 148 registrants and then about 100 people actually participating in that workshop. We had the breakout rooms, which we'll experience again this evening, which gave participants the ability to give us input on some precedent images and what they thought about the existing conditions and what they might envision for future conditions within Pinehurst, the 2 small area plans. We additionally had the website with the survey as a way for people who weren't able to attend the workshop to participate via that. The polling results from that were very helpful to us to understand things like what were the strengths and weaknesses that stakeholders perceived for the existing conditions of both Village Place that you see up on screen here, and then we'll look at Pinehurst South in a minute, as well as what were the areas where people most frequented, as well as what else is needed within Village Place. So you can see here in the orange color, the top answers, but there were many, many of these answers were divided or split. If you'd like to review the full content of of this document, it is posted to that Engage Pinehurst website. I'll just point out a few. This is part of that summary document that you'll find. But I'll just point out a few of the comments that we built off of. For land use and character, there were comments such as the area that we're looking at in Village Place feels like a hodgepodge. The industrial is fairly dominant and is a disconnect from the village core or the village center. There were mixed opinions about the multifamily that was built, as well as looking forward for more multifamily or single family attached. There were concerns also about the traffic that new uses would generate, and a concern that if new development came in, that it echo or emulate the character of the village core. For transportation, as I mentioned, parking, street connectivity, making sure things were walkable, and that was also walkable and bikeable were concerns. There were concerns about getting to important destinations, of course, like the village core, the new elementary school, Rassy Wicker Park, and how to connect through the area. The gateway image of Rattlesnake Trail at 211 was a concern. And as I mentioned, parking is a concern, and make sure that there's both parallel parking as well as parking lots that are brought in with any new development to help park the new uses. We also asked you to take a look at some precedent images. And these images were all of places within Pinehurst that you probably know very well, and just give your opinion. You can see that the likes are in the green dots, and maybe the dislikes are in the red dots. So there was some mixed opinion about some of the images, and then kind of clear winners. And we built off of that, and you'll see some new precedent images that we'll walk you through tonight. Okay, our guiding principles that we took a look at. First, we started with the Olmsted, taking a look at other Olmsted plans. Of course, Olmsted laid out the original plan of Pinehurst, and looking at other communities that were designed by Olmsted, we see that the curvilinear street forms, following topography, and continuously redirecting your views as you travel down them is a hallmark of those plans. You also see, because of those intersections of curvilinear streets, the triangular medians at those intersections. The grid, it is a connected street network, but it's an elongated organic grid. And you'll see that in the plans that we've proposed as well. There were no cul-de-sacs that were envisioned as part of this plan. And there were largely consistent setbacks, maybe with the exception of civic buildings, but you'll see as you go through Pinehurst, typical 20-foot setback for residential buildings, for example. The streets were all tree lined in these plans, but as a departure in what we'll see in Pinehurst and what you experience every day is that the plantings are a little bit different than the typical regular spaced deciduous trees that you might find in the other plans that Olmsted and Manning have done, which makes Pinehurst unique and memorable. The landscapes within the open spaces are organic as well. In Pinehurst, most of those principles apply, with that exception of the tree-lined streets. You can see in the original plan that shows the village core area, the plan was drawn with those regularly spaced trees, but that's not really what got installed. Over time, with Manning's input, there were more evergreens installed, and they were in groupings. So again, we've tried to replicate that in our street sections and the plans to carry forward that feel and character of Pinehurst. Some of the principles that we carry with us, independent of place, are make sure that we are creating identifiable centers and nodes. This is particularly applicable to NC5 when we look at Pinehurst South. We want to make sure that it's not just a continuous line of commercial, that there are actually centers that have some identity along a corridor such as NC5. We generally like to make sure that there's a mix of uses within a 5 or 10-minute walk. So you'll see these on some of our plans, you'll see these radii appear, and that lets us know what is walkable within the area. We advocate that each of these centers has a unique character, and you'll see that in some of the detail plans that we'll share with you tonight. Connected street network, as you saw for Pinehurst South, that was one of the recommendations coming out of the comp plan. The benefits of connected street network are that it creates better accessibility, more direct routes than a branching system of, say, an arterial collector and local streets that end in cul-de-sacs. A connected street network such as Olmsted envisioned in the village allows for redundancy in the network, more connection points. And it also allows for better walkability, bikeability, and transit where that occurs. Because of those reasons, it tends to slow traffic down. It improves health by allowing people to walk and bike to destinations, and has more intersections, which causes people to stop and wait for pedestrians as well. So for all of those reasons, you'll see in the plans that we've brought to share with you tonight that we advocate for a connected street network. We want our streets to be multi-purpose. Those are complete streets that have accommodations for pedestrians, cyclists, transit riders, and motorists alike. Complete streets recognize that walking to the library, walking to the park, riding your bike to school are equally important as driving to destinations. So we're reprioritizing streets to accommodate those users. And we also recognize that streets are our most frequented open spaces. We often think of open space as just the parks and greens and plazas that are within the village. But the reality is the streets are the veins that connect those spaces. And a lot of times it's where we spend most of our time. We love to go to parks and greens, but we spend a lot of time walking, biking, or driving on our streets. We also want to integrate stormwater management into the streets when possible. So what we end up are streets that are jackknives. The Swiss Army knife of streets is really what we're looking for when we put in new streets within the village. As we know, during COVID, traffic is a little bit less, but we may need some more room outdoors. We tend to like to have in the core area our streets be adaptable to be able to be closed for festivals, and you'll see that in a couple locations that we share with you tonight. That's not everywhere, but just in the core areas that you'll see in the detail plans, when we can convert our streets to allow for more public open space at special event times, or during a pandemic when we need more outdoor dining space. We want our streets to be adaptable to accommodate those uses. We want to create street frontage along our streets, so where there are opportunities to create new streets or create infill development, we want to make sure that our buildings are lining those streets. We always want to incorporate a variety of open spaces, and that's a community benefit. So if new development's coming in, we'll create the framework, that the development standards that require a certain amount or percentage of usable open space that would be available to the public. And those can come in the form of plazas, linear greens, attached greens, squares, and recreation spaces.